So I'm here with George Jones. George, you're in Vienna, Virginia. Is that right?
Correct.
Yeah, great. How long have you lived there?
Well, I guess I've been here now since 19 this area. I've been here since 1973. When I came back from Vietnam, and but I was stationed at Fort Belvoir, and this particular area right here in Vienna. We've been built this house about 20 years ago, but I've been in this general Washington D.C. area since '74.
hmm You're originally from Winston-Salem, North Carolina.
Winston-Salem, North Carolina. That's where I'm originally from.
I'm originally from Columbia, South Carolina.
Oh, okay. Neighbors almost.
Almost neighbors, right? Right. Uh, and so, just kind of briefly, if you wouldn't mind, kind of sum up your service history. What branch were you in? How long were you in? And what did you do?
Okay. I actually spent just about 11 years, active duty. I went in the military right out of high school, 17 years old. Uh, took basic training, Fort Bragg, North Carolina, and from there I always wanted to be a medic. I used to watch this old show that used to come on called Combat. I just wanted to be a medic. I thought that sort of was my sort of niche that I wanted to do. So after leaving, doing my basic training Fort Bragg, they sent me to Fort Sam Houston, which is in Texas, for the combat medic training. Um, Being that I had just graduated and was only 17, I was still 17 at that point. Um, Out of over 300 medics, about 15 of us didn't get orders for Vietnam. All the rest of them got orders for Vietnam. I sort of later figured out that the reason I didn't go to Vietnam at that point was that I was still 17. So they sent me to Germany, and I spent about 13, 14 months in Germany, and I just didn't want to be there. Not that I didn't like Germany, is that, being at turned 18 then, you wanted that combat, you watched it on TV. And I want to tell everybody that it's such a huge difference from what you see on TV than what you actually experience. So what I did out of Germany, I actually volunteered to go to Vietnam. Each time I've been to Vietnam, I've volunteered to go. Lots of people say that, oh, you're nuts, but that young, you want to get in the middle of everything. You think you do. So I left Germany, came back home for 30 days leave. Then they sent me to, went to Vietnam. Was assigned at a medical aid station when I first went there, and then I ultimately wound up with a mechanized infantry unit. So in doing that, then I wound up at 7th Battalion, 11th Artillery. I was their medic, stationed in Tay Ninh, Vietnam, when I first went there. And that's where you really learn that, war is not like what you see on TV. Those guys always come back next week, and, there's a big difference. And it's nothing like seeing what really happens right there in your face. You see things that any 17 or 18-year-olds shouldn't be seeing at that point in their life, but we all did.
Yeah. So what was it about that particular specialty that appealed to you? I mean, before you got in, you said you were watching, combat on television. Was there something about the medics in that show that really appealed to you?
Well, they were always, to me, they were always doing something positive. You're always helping people. There was things that you could do. And it's just, it's sort of like that little thing inside of you saying, this is my niche. It's like some guys, are, mechanics, that's their niche. I really admire them, or electricians. There was something early on, and I'd never been involved in the medical field for that 17, 18 years at all, but it just is what I wanted to do, because it was always something that, all the guys came to the medic, or it was like they used to call me doc when I was out in the field with them. So you got used to that. So it was just something that I wanted to do. And I really, I've enjoyed my entire career being in the medical field.
Yeah, you continued to work in that field after you got out of the service. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. Well, after my second, when I was did my second tour over there, one of the doctors that I was working for, he was our battalion surgeon. He said, you need to do something other than be a medic. And so he actually talked me into going to X-ray school. So when I came back and I reenlisted the second time, um, I reenlisted to go to X-ray school. So when I went to X-ray school and came back from that, it was a field. It was a field that I saw a lot of promise in. That was you could make a fairly decent living in doing that. So initially, I just did X-rays. That's what I did out at Fort Belvoir. I was an X-ray tech there. While being at Fort Belvoir, I used to go volunteer at Georgetown Hospital because a friend of mine was telling me about this new fancy machine that they were coming up with. It was the only one in the world. It was called a CAT scanner. And I used to go over there and volunteer work just to learn how to, learn how to run it. So I did that, did that for about 6 months. And in the middle of that training is when I was diagnosed with this renal cell carcinoma, this cancer of the kidney. Um, and it's sort of funny about that at Fort Belvoir. What I used to do is just kidney exams. All I did was, the things that are called IVPs. So that's what I did all day long. So the dyes and stuff that they inject into you, I always wanted to see what that feel like, because, the patients would come in, they would say, hey, when I was injecting them, they were saying, you feel warm, feel like they're urinating on themselves, a funny taste in their mouth, tastes like a penny. So I always wanted to do that. Once again, been a little naive. I got one of the docs to agree to inject me with it just so I could see what it felt like. You could never do this today, and you couldn't do this today anymore. But he injected me with it, and I got all those tastes. So the reason that I did that is that whenever I did the patients, I injected all my patients and all there, and I sort of started them from beginning to end. I wanted to be able to tell them, because a lot of times if you're getting that injection, it's sort of frightening when you start to feel these things, especially somebody says, I'm peeing on myself. Well, no, you're not. That's the feeling. And I could tell them that so you could easily relate to it. So since I had the dye in me, he goes, well, let's go ahead and take a picture of your belly, since that dye is in there, because it's excreted by the kidneys. That's how it comes through your system. And we're looking for things like kidney stones and tumors. That's what I was doing with the test. So after he took that first picture, he came back in the room. He goes, do you have any pain on your right side? And I really knew this guy. He was a great guy. He just retired a couple of years ago. And I go, don't even start. So I thought he was pulling my chain. And he goes, no. So we took some extra pictures. And we found was that I had a tumor on my right kidney, about a little bit smaller than a lemon. It caused me no pain, nothing. So brief story short is that's how we found the tumor. We found it by mistake. We found it on a Monday. I had another procedure done on a Wednesday, and we took it out that Friday. So it was all that quick, but it was just, some people say you were living right. It was sort of a godsend type thing, but it's things that was meant to happen. So it's almost sort of like I was getting sort of a payback for the things that I had done and seen and felt. So after that, I was in a medical holding company because since I was going to make a career out of the military, they told me three things. One, I could never be promoted again. I was stuck. Because two, I could never go to a combat zone again. And three, I would have to always be around what they call a class 3 hospital, upper echelon hospital, because I only had one kidney, because they took the other kidney out. Knock on wood, it's been good since 1974. And one funny thing is the day that I had that kidney removed, that's the same day that Nixon resigned. So it's always a marker, that's the part that I missed. So, but all in all, like I said, I've been lucky, and it's sort of like I give, and this whole system sort of gives back to me.
Yeah, well, let's talk about that a little bit. When did you start working with VVA, and in what capacity?
Well, I've been with VBA now about, I joined that group about 8 years ago. But one of the things that really sort of drew me into it was one of the guys, I started doing wood, wood turning about 15, 16 years ago. And this group of it's called capillary wood turners. I would say 90% of these guys are either retired, been vets, work for the government. Also, it was a whole group of us there. So we found out about this VVA through a guy that I used to work at the hospital, and I liked it because it was doing stuff for vets. Because when we came back, speaking of the Vietnam vets, it wasn't the cheering and people look forward to having you back. We were always sort of shunned. So most Vietnam vets, if you really talk to them, you can really go back about really the start of the war and all in Iraq, that we sort of came out of the woodwork. Because one of the sayings that we have, that no vet will be treated like we were, like we came back. So we started to support these. And when I heard about this chapter and what they were doing and their purpose, it just drew me right into it. Plus, a lot of the vets there, we always have a speaker at our meetings and all. You go there and you hear that some of the things that you're thinking in your mind and things that have happened to you, if you're talking to these guys and they're talking back, it's the same thing. So there are like people out there that's just like you.
Yeah. Um, you mentioned, what it was like for you when you came home, and you're the first veteran I've talked to who came home, uh, stayed for a couple of months, and said, "Send me back." Um, can you talk a little bit about those 90 days and of all the ways to get out of wherever you were? I'm assuming Winston Salem.
Right.
There are a million places you could have gone from there, and you chose to go back to Vietnam. So can you talk a little bit about those 90 days for me?
Well, when I came and when I got out, because I was discharged, I had done my time, and I'm thinking, great, I got my honorable discharge. I'm going to do the GI Bill and do that. Well, coming back to Winston and trying to apply for a job, because I'm one that's sort of been proud all my life that I didn't want unemployment. I've never had a day on taking drawing unemployment because I could work. Well, after getting back, and applying for multiple jobs and not getting them, and I'm thinking, I've done my time. I'm an honorably discharged vet. I had at that point I was a medic, but there was jobs around Winston. You either work for R.J. Reynolds Tobacco Company or Haynes. So I was applying for jobs like that. Well, I went to uh, one of our newspapers there, and they had a job there that was available. And the lady that was taking the application, she made it very clear that I was not the right color for that job. I mean, made it very clear. And an 18-year-old white guy came in who had not even been in the military, and this job was given to him, and they made it very clear. Also, at that point in my life, and had gotten married, and that whole situation was tough. People didn't want to understand what you've done. You really didn't want to talk to them about it. I just sort of felt myself going down a road to getting in trouble, and it was real easy because you start to see the negatives in everything. So I spent the time there trying to get a job and really just couldn't do it. My marriage was definitely falling apart, and so I just found that the order that I had been accustomed to with the military, it really helped. And I just knew if I didn't leave Winston, I was not gonna ever go anywhere. I've seen some of the guys that have come back and they didn't do well. So I elected to go back in the military. It was on my 89th day, because they give you 90 days after you get out to re-enlist, and you didn't lose your rank or anything. So when I did that, they sent me to where did I go to? I went to Fort Devens, I just didn't like the States. I didn't like what was going on. So I volunteered to go back to Vietnam. It was, even though it was scary and people go where you're crazy for doing it, you must have some kind of death wish. At least people over there depended on you. And excuse me, let me just cut this phone off. I'm sorry about this. So going back, I met some great people, and one of the things that I did learn each time I was in Vietnam was that there were people that you were associated with, you slept with, and you're in that same little muddy hole with them. That in a million years you never thought you would be around them. I mean, that's been the strange thing. There were guys, and I know there were guys that would look at me and go, "I don't hang around with any black guy," or just the crazy stuff. But one thing about being over there is that everybody had to have each other's back. I mean, only color and all that really mattered was red, and that was blood. So that was one of my reasons for wanting to go back. And I think I did have a positive. My battalion surgeon, I still communicate with him after 50 plus years. But you just made friends.
Yeah. Yeah. So, those connections, I think that form, the impression that I get is that, when you run into another veteran, even if it was someone you didn't serve with, a veteran from Vietnam or a veteran from any other war, that there's a sort of mutual understanding that exists there. And is that what led you to start sharing your wood turning with other veterans?
Well, the vet, they initially shared it with me because that's how I got caught up with. I hadn't done wood turning since I was in high school.
Mm. Mm.
I went to a show to buy a planer. It's a thing to smooth wood down because we were redoing this old Victorian house, and these guys were there, and they were all vets, and they're still my friends today. And they were doing a demo at this wood turning show, and it's something that just sort of grabbed you. And talking to the guys, because to me, I always call this wood turning thing. Oh, it's almost like therapy. I can get in there and totally just, because you have to be right there. You have to be right in the moment and just forget everything. And we'll sit around and we'll talk about your experiences and how you got through them and the different difficulties. So the wood turning has been a real positive part of that because there's a lot of vets, at least in my club, that are currently doing it. And the biggest thing that we've been able to do too is with like the current vets, the guys that are active duty right now. We draw them in, we support them, and it's really great. We had a guy not too long ago that came to our club to speak to Vietnam Vet Club, and he was an amputee. And just talking to him and giving him, reaching out to him. So it's not just our Vietnam vets. It's all, like you say, it's all the vets. It's all that we can share some, because nobody really understands unless you've done it. I got a little patch on my shirt here. I'll hold it still. Well, which one? Oh, that's the wrong one. This one here. Can you read that?
Barely. I see the word Vietnam at the bottom.
Okay. Well, basically what it says is if you haven't been there, shut up. Because, we used to have a lot of people that would come up and, give the vets a hard time. And it's just sort of one of those things that without a doubt, regardless of what your job was, whether it was a mechanic, a cook, or a medic, or a postmaster, everybody's got something to share. And everybody's job means that much. The most important guy in our unit was the mail clerk. He brought your mail. If you're in Vietnam, that meant a whole lot, or your little goodies and all. So we all depended on each other. The guys, they used to depend on me. I was the medic. They took care of me. I had a guy once that told me I had to burn poop, but the guys in the battery says, no, Doc doesn't burn poop. They took care of that. So we all took care of each other. So that's, it was a big thing with it.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, I'd really like to zero in now on the time that you spend sharing your wood turning passion with other veterans. You know, now that it's been sort of passed on to you by veterans, how do you pass it on to others? Do they come to you, or does word get around? How does that happen?
Well, what we do is we, this Capitol area wood turners, we'll have vets that'll come in, and we'll show them how to turn, show them how to safely turn. I'm also on the board of governors at Aramont School of the Arts in Tennessee. We have a veterans program there that we give vets scholarships to come there, and but it can be in anything from painting to wood turning, so that's been a big plus in doing that too. And I always say that wood turners are sort of like pushers. You always want to get that next person hooked in doing it because it's amazing. It's peaceful. You got to be right. And a lot of the thoughts and stuff that are in your head, you can you have to throw them away because nothing else can be there except that. So our club brings vets in. We were mentoring some vets out at Fort Belvoir, but due to the COVID, a lot of, that face-to-face stuff has had to stop our club. We didn't disband, we do Zoom meetings. So you really can't get out there and touch them. Our the chapters meetings, what I had started doing, and I think a lot of the vets liked it, when we'd have our meetings, I would always turn a piece, take a piece and we would raffle it off. So that piece always went. So I've even got comments now about they miss getting the pieces that I turned because we had 12 meetings a year and I would always donate a piece, at
No,
that
would you?
at that
I'm sorry. Would you turn the piece at the meeting, or would you
no,
turn?
I wouldn't. No, the piece I would turn prior to going to the meeting,
I see. Yeah.
and then I would finish that piece, and then we would raffle it off. Doing that. So I think a lot of, and the wives liked it too, because the wives come to come to the chapter meetings to do that. So that was sort of my way. And all my pieces that I do, I always sign the bottom of me. I love the 25th Infantry Division, so I would always sign the bottom of my pieces. And one thing I learned is that nothing's perfect. So I sign all my pieces with my name, 25th Infantry Division, and nothing's perfect. And that's sort of been my approach. So you may fall down, but you got to get back up. Nothing's going to be just right every day. So
Yeah.
that's sort of the way I live.
So take me into that. Take me a little bit, if you can, into that headspace that you're in when you're turning a piece of wood. Like, what are you feeling? What are you smelling? What are you thinking about?
Well, it's sort of depends on the piece of wood. A lot of my friends, they can hold up a piece of wood and they'll say, "This is going to be this exactly." I don't. I get into the piece and people tell me I'm nuts. I say I let the wood talk to me, and it sort of tells me what it wants to be, and that's how I end up with what I do. Uh, I like pieces that have imperfections. To a lot of pieces that I turn. Um, I like to see the bark included in it. I don't like the perfectly round pieces. I don't turn a lot of round, just perfectly round pieces. They call it round and brown. That's not me. I like the odd shapes, uh, leaving the bark on it. I take a limb and cut a limb in half, and I'll turn that and keep the wings on it to where you can see where the limbs come out and, where the piece starts. So but when I'm there, it's different woods have different smells. Some woods you go, wow, this really stinks, and based on what it is. But I just have a good time doing it. I like turning green wood, like if a tree is just cut down, I like turning that. You'll get the water where it sprays out on you, because the wood is full of moisture, so that comes out. Um, and there's just different challenges with the different pieces, and that's sort of the way I look at it. Every piece that I put on has its own unique way of doing it. What's going to actually come out of it. So I just do a little crazy stuff. All the guys in the club say I'm a little nuts in what I do. I turn wood that's a lot of times people look at and say, well, you can't get anything out of that it's beyond its usefulness. Well, that's where I like to take it because, so many of us, you look at where we came from, people would say that, you're beyond your usefulness. But, if you dig just a little deeper, you'll be amazed at what you can find out, about people and what's under the, what's under the skin and what you can get out of, if you just give them a chance. And that's me. That's why the one little thing I did, I call it second chances, because I know I, got a second chance, because if I'd have stayed where I was in the beginning, I can't even imagine, where I would be now.
Well, that is amazing. I'm a jazz musician, and
Okay.
so the idea of this process being a conversation between you and the piece of wood, right? You said you like to let the wood tell
I'll
you
let,
what it's going to be. I totally get that, right? That's jazz,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So, you know, what are some of the things, besides the way it feels or the way it's responding to the lathe? Like, how does it talk to you? How does it tell you what it wants to be?
Give me 1 second. I'll show you a perfect example. Can you see this piece?
I can, yeah, but the podcast listeners won't be able to see
Okay.
it, so
All
you
right.
have to
But
you have to
just
describe
pieces.
it.
Okay. Just pieces like this. This is a piece. It has a crack the entire way through it. I've had pieces like this with big cracks in it, and it's just a challenge. Can you turn it before it breaks in half, or breaks off the lathe? I've had pieces to do that. So when I first started doing it, I thought I'm a big guy. I can do this, and I can just muscle through. Well, no, you can't. You got to be gentle with it. You just have to let. I've learned how to listen at the wood. I've learned how to listen at the tool, because the tool's making a certain noise, the wood's making a certain noise, and it's like your jazz. When they play together, you get much smoother cuts, and you can get all the way through it. But if you fight it, and I got a couple holes in my shop in the walls there where I tried to bully a piece, and it breaks up on you. It flies off the lathe.
And has that translated into how you deal with people, in veterans in particular?
I like exactly. I think that has a lot to do with it, because a lot of vets, they come back with with a lot of anger. I was one of them too. Uh, and you just have to know how to get that out and give them their time. And that's what I try to tell people. You have to give them their time, and they'll come around. Uh, if you give them the time. But if you try to force them to do certain things, or try to make them feel bad about what they were part of, because really all the vets are just doing one thing. They're following orders. They're doing what they're been told to do, and so I think that's a big point. So yeah, that's a big point in how you go about doing things.
Yeah, I was just thinking about, how you described it. If you try to muscle it, it breaks, right? That you've become really, really good at listening to the wood. And I think, that's the way all kinds of relationships are built, not just a relationship with a piece of wood, but relationship with people as well.
Right. And if well, I retired about 4 years ago now. And, I worked in one hospital for 39 years. And, you see and meet people, and, a lot of these patients have become lifetime friends. And the particular area I worked in the hospital, you were never, they never came near, you were always looking for something bad. That's what I worked in diagnostic radiology. So you're looking for that tumor, that bleed, that break. They never came to see you because, it's like a day at the beach. So you had to learn how to listen to people, even to get through the exam. I don't know if you've ever had an MRI, but getting the MRI is not that hard. It's keeping the people on the table. That's the thing. So you have to have a certain amount of how you're going to do that. So I applied a lot of what I learned in the military, and how just dealing with vets and all, to doing that, to doing that too. So one is the same.
Have you had an experience, sharing this passion, wood turning, with another veteran, where you saw the light go on? I mean, just somebody just sort of they just got it, and it made a lasting impression on them, changed them in some way, or liberated them in some way.
Well, I'll say that, I've become an outlet to people. I think people, that was their outlet. It's almost, like I said, I call it therapy. It still is, it still is for me. So yes, and I think anybody that does it, and a lot of these vets, they have a lot of, I won't call it anger, but sort of fear built up in them. And it's sort of that way of letting them let it out. And you see the smile, you sort of see the light going in their eye when they're doing something other than thinking about, the bad things that happen.
Yeah, I get that. Therapy. Is there, I mean, without naming any names, is there a particular example that stands out in your memory of a big therapeutic success?
I remember once at Air when I was down at Airmont, we had these sit down lace, and they had a double amputee that came in, and turning most of the time, 90% of us are standing up to do it. But the school bought a sit down lathe to where he could turn sitting in his chair. And, because I think a lot of times when you sort of locked in that house thinking there's nothing that I can do. And then when you turn it, even if it's not turning any more than a pin or a small bowl, but to see that, those shavings come off. So we did have I do remember him, and he had just a great time doing it. And I think he's going to the school just about every other year, after that.
Hmm. You still in touch with him at all?
Still in touch. Oh yeah, I got a lot of friends that vets that don't live here necessarily, but we became basically lifelong friends.
Yeah.
And you can see them a lot of times. It's we'll be at one of the training programs or something, and vets, especially the Vietnam era, it's really hard to find out who they are. And then you can get them to start talking about the experience. Well, me, what I've always done, anytime I go, I wear, this is one of my smocks, and I got all my unit patches on it all. So that sort of draws a lot of people out. They look, oh, I see this. And next thing you know, you're talking to them about their experiences in Vietnam. So until really, like I say, the last 10 years or so, most of the Vietnam vets never were proud about being a part of it.
You know, one of the things that really strikes me about Vietnam veterans in particular, and my father, my father was a Vietnam era veteran. He didn't get called to go to Vietnam, but he was in the service at the time. One of the things that strikes me about your group in particular is the degree to which you take care of each other. You know, you had a quote in your WETA piece, which I watched, called "Life's Second Chances."
Mhm.
You said we came back and we were ignored, and it reminded me of the fact that the wall in D.C., the Vietnam Veterans Memorial, uh, was not a gift from a grateful nation. It was a gift conceived and built by Vietnam veterans for each other.
Right.
Um, do you have any thoughts on that? And what sets this generation, that particular generation of veterans, apart?
Well, I think with us, it was the one that we weren't in the Great War, World War II, or Korea, and all those guys sort of came back. We basically were looked at as losers, like we lost, and it's all about winning and losing. Sort of like that day going to a baseball game, you happen to lose that game or something, and everybody's down and they're a little bit maybe ticked off at you. What more could we have done? I think the vets did everything that they possibly could do. So, like I said, there were protests and all going on when we got back, against the war. And I can see protesting against the war, but you can't protest against the vets, because the vets went there because they were told, their country says we need you. And we were all, fed a little bit of not truths, half truths. We're going to fight communism, because that was my whole thing. I thought, oh, well, we're going to go over there and, we're going to wipe these communists out and all of that. Well, it's about more than that. If you really looked at the history of Vietnam, this thing has been going on for ages, and they were proud people. So, they were not going to have somebody just come in and take them over. But that's not what we were told. We were told we're going to fight communism, and they're being invaded and all of that. And so many of the people that were making the decisions about the war never served in the war. They were right back here in the district. They were making decisions on the ground that really affected the guys on the ground. And it's uh, they had no idea.
Yeah. Do you have any thoughts on how the experience of veterans returning from Iraq or Afghanistan, how their experience was made better by your generation, right? You wanted to make sure that in the future veterans didn't come home to the kind of experience that you had at your homecoming. Can you talk a little bit about that?
I think that, you hit it right on the head with that. All the vets that I know, we were determined that was not going to happen. That was not going to happen to them. And I know there were a lot more horrific injuries and stuff that came. I mean, our generation was not greeted at the airport with people waving flags and saying thank you for your service. And now I, have wearing one of my caps, people thank you for your service. We were determined that was gonna happen. That's one of the functions of our chapter. Our chapter now supports vets if the vet needs some assistance, and we all get into that little box at times. I remember, heck, I was that too. Vet runs tough on the rent. Our particular chapter helps with that. And there's a lot of chapters that do things like that. Uh, we have guys in our club that are mentors in the court system. Sometimes these current vets come back and they get in a little bit of trouble. And, we have people that are there for them. There was nobody like that for us. If you came back and even if you talked about the problems and the stuff that you saw or were part of, you were looked at as being weak. And I think that if you talk to your dad, he'll tell you that was one of the things you just didn't talk about, because you know, you're weak. PTSD, lots of us came back with PTSD, but you never would say it. I mean, next thing you know is that, you're just a wimp, you're a coward or whatever. But, seeing different things and being part of, different experiences, um, you just can't get beyond it,
Yeah.
and people need that help. So that's why we're determined to help the current vets today. And the thing is, I think they'll pass it down if there's other vets that's coming back. I think they're willing to pass it down and help as well too.
Right. Right. Um, I'm sorry, my head is just spinning now because I'm thinking about what a significant pivot that was, right? Because I imagine that World War I vets looked at World War II vets and said, "Oh, you guys didn't have it that bad." And then World War II vets looked at you guys and said, "Oh, you guys didn't have it that bad,"
Yeah,
we, and now your generation has said, "Yeah, that's enough. Like, let's all just recognize that war is hell. It doesn't matter what war you were in or whether you won it or lost it or how it was perceived. War is hell for everybody who's in war."
period. Period. I mean, there's just things that you see and you're asked to do, and I mean, they're just not, it's just not normal. You see somebody's leg get blown off, or you see all this horrific stuff, and then you're supposed to react to it. I mean, I've seen nurses at these surgical hospitals. I got a really good friend who's active duty now, and she's a nurse, and the stuff that she's seen, we sat around and talked, and she was part of the Iraqi war, and the people that had come into her surgical unit and what you see, and now a lot of lives that would have been lost even during my era, and we thought we had a lot of neat stuff that, the medevacs and all, they can preserve life. I mean, we visited vets at Walter Reed a while back, and you see these guys that are really just, there's nothing really left. During my era, they would have died on the battlefield, but now, they can do different things to maintain them. So people have, like I say, you have no idea the things that they are also asked to do. You know, it's tough, but you just don't get rid of it either. You just can't say, okay, I'm going back home, I'm going to turn that off. The ones that turn it off, I think, are the ones that, just completely turn it off and block it out. I think those are the ones that really have a lot of problems, later on. That's what's really good now about at least having an outlet that you can talk to somebody, you can pick up the phone. They're making, conversations a lot easier to have than a while back. Even the guys, the Second World War, I mean, they couldn't talk about their fears. Look at some of the stuff that they had to do, but you had to lock it in because you didn't want to appear as being weak. But it's crazy stuff. War is not fun.
Yeah. I I'm assuming that you have been to the wall probably
Yes,
many,
multiple.
many times. Do you remember the first time you went there? The first time you saw it?
I remember the first time I went there because initially, and you can look at history, there was a lot of us initially that didn't like the design of the wall, being sort of like this. Some guys are calling it like a black scar. You buried us under the ground. Thing that we didn't have a monument that you could just walk up to with the statues and all of that. But after getting there, and then when they did the addition where they did the three soldiers standing there, I think that helped. And then they finally put the one about the nurses that's there, and you got to spend some time. It made a little bit more sense, but it's just amazing there to go and see all those names. You ever seen it?
I
You ever
have.
been? Yeah, it's come around, but it took a lot of us a long time to sort of totally accept what it is. It makes a lot more sense now, when you look at it, because it does sort of give you that chance to sort of get down, not being exposed. And you see a lot of guys there, can sort of expose their real emotions right there. Whereas, standing around the different statues and all, you can't. So uh, it's been good.
And when you go there, is there a particular section or a name that you look for? Like, how do you relate to the wall on your visits?
Well, there's one guy that I always go and I see his name because I was the medic when he died. He got shot in the head. So I always go and see his spot, on the wall. I always visit those three statues because, I mean, just every inch of it, I just look at all the detail they had, from the guy with the mosquito repellent in his head, just the little small things that they do. The black guy with the towel around his neck, uh, just so I really liked it. And I really like what the piece that they did with the nurses. So and I really like going at night. I've only been down there a couple of times in the chapter went during the daytime. I like seeing it, what it has to offer at night.
Hmm.
Because if you talk to most of the Vietnam vets, all of us hate at night. You hate it when the sun went down. You couldn't wait until the sun came back up, because that's when most of the really bad stuff happened, when the sun went down.
Wow. Good. Well, listen, I this has been great. If there's anything that I didn't ask you that you think I should have, we still have time. I'd love to hear any thoughts you have to add on any of what we've covered, or things that we didn't cover.
No, other than, this hospital that I worked at, was a constant, give back. Working there, that was, a big part of it too. And just being able to transition from being a soldier, and then people accepting you for what you could do, what you could offer them as far as taking care of patients. That's been the big part of, what I do besides the attorney, that part of it. And initially when I retired, it was, sort of tough, but I turn every day. I turn, and now I've started just painting now, to some painting now as well too. Um, Especially right now, we're all sort of locked away. We can't really do anything. We can't really, get together. And I think that's tough on everybody, not being able to get out, because we're just not that kind of people. You always want to talk and touch and that kind of thing. So I'm waiting. There's a couple of guys that I want to teach to do some of this. I like abstract paintings, to do some of that as well too. But until we can get that squared away, we can't do that.
Yeah. And that's your work there on the wall
That's
behind you?
all the stuff. My downstairs, I finished my downstairs about 15 years ago, and it's full of my wood turning and paintings. And if I'm not painting, I'm turning. And now what I've started to do is combine the painting and the wood turning. So I'm painting some of the exteriors on the bowls. I do this form, but I like abstract. That way everybody is right. Nobody can say, well, I don't like the way you drew that dog. Well, I don't draw dogs, so you can always find something that fits you in a piece.
Yeah. Yeah, that's amazing. And so the painting, in terms of therapy and headspace, I'm imagining that you go to a very similar place as when
Same
you're turning
place,
wood.
the same, but it's a little bit messier and with the painting stuff, but I got an area that's all sort of wrapped off that I can do this in. So it is, you really get into the same thing. And then, like I say, when you start to look into a piece and you find something in there for yourself. I got one piece, and it just, to me, I call it my vet piece. And I find this guy that's in the picture, he looks tortured, in the piece. It just looks like he's sort of screaming, but so it's good.
Hmm. I just want to check one thing before we go. I know that I got some a specific set of questions from Callie that she wanted me
Okay.
to ask you, and I want to make sure I didn't miss any.
All
And I
right.
think I did. I think I got them all. And of course, now my Outlook is freezing up because
You touched it.
yeah, because now's when I need it. Let's see. Uh, Here we go. Callie. All right. Yeah, we covered all that. Let me just look one other place here.
All right.
No, I think we've covered it. I think I got Callie's questions as well as mine. So if I find out that I'm wrong about that, um, maybe I'll see if I can get you back on for
Oh yeah.
15 minutes, just to
Okay.
fill in any blanks that I may have missed. But I think we've covered it, and I think I've got enough great material to do, several episodes just about you. So the challenge for me is going to be, you know, how do I make this? How do I cut this down to 15 really compelling minutes?
All right. Good.
Um,
And the
so
one thing I'll say in closing is that, we all have something to give. You'll be just amazed if, sometimes you think it's not much, but I've seen people that are down and out, but everybody's got something to give, if you just give them the time to do it, and just share what you got. So we all sort of share.
yeah, and I think when you do that, you know, uh, sometimes you help that person become, a sharer. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
you light somebody up. You light up 10 guys, right? And those 10 guys light up 10 guys each. You know what I mean? It starts to spread. So I
Right.
think there's a real beauty and a real poetry in not only sharing your gift, but helping someone discover theirs, which
Right.
they then can turn around and share.
Yeah. You just move it right along. That's like I say, that's what got me, and just hanging out with these guys and doing this stuff. And I mean, you almost forced to sort of share. You can't hold it in. You got to do it. It's like, hey, somebody helped me, gave me a hand up, and I'll give somebody else a hand up. You're not looking for a handout. You're just looking for a hand up. So,
Yeah. When did you buy your first lathe? I mean, how soon after you discovered wood turning did you go out and invest in the tools?
well, what I did is the guys, I stood there and watched them for 2 hours. By the way, that machine I went out to buy, I never bought it. So I watched them for 2 hours. The guy was turning a little bowl. His name was C.A. Savoy. And he was turning this little bowl. He turned it, then he gave it to me, and he gave me a card to the club meeting. I went to a club meeting, and they had this 50-50 raffle, and I won a gouge. That's one of the tools that you use to turn it. So it's like, okay, I got this gouge. Now, what am I going to do with it? So I went out and I bought a little small lathe. And as soon as you touch that wood, it's addictive if you ever try it. It's sort of scary initially. It's definitely scary. And you go to the club meetings and you meet these guys, and then they show you how to really do it. Next thing you know, I bought a medium-sized lathe. Now I got a full-size lathe. I've turned, biggest piece I've ever turned is 4 feet. I do a lot of abstract, on that too. So it's been I bought it about my big lathe about 13 years ago, but I bought my first lathe within the first 6 months of going to this meeting. And it does. These guys just pull you right down the rabbit hole. And because when I was working, I would go out, most times I'd be at work by 5 in the morning. I'd leave sometimes 7:30, 8 o'clock at night. And working in the medical field there, especially my last 5 years when I was administrator of the department, you need some place to sort of let your hair down and relax. I'd come home every day and would turn sometime an hour. Sometime I made nothing. Sometime I made nothing but shavings. But you could always take that tensions of the day, and you could drop them right off on the floor in shavings and all. So like I said, it's my therapy for work, and it's my therapy for what I've been doing. It's an unbelievable hobby.
Well, now you've got me wanting to try it, and I
You
love
should,
that. I love that line about sometimes I made nothing but shavings.
exactly. And that's really, but I was satisfied. It sort of gives you that way of taking that second breath. Okay, now I can breathe. Yeah,
Hmm.
so it works out.
All
Yes,
right.
you tried. You tried, and you'll be hooked.
Yeah, that's what I need is another expensive hobby. Right? You can see I've got one already
I
that
see.
cost me more than it pays me. So yeah, but I don't know what I'd do without it.
Yeah, right, exactly.
I don't play because I want to play. I play because I have to play.
Oh, well, it's your therapy too. See, you're
Right.
into it. Yeah,
I have to play whether I feel like it or not. I have to do it.
right. Well, it's good. It's a good thing. We're
Yeah.
lucky we got those outlets.
Yeah. Yeah. I just as an aside, I mean, I actually stopped music entirely for 10 years, and it wasn't a conscious decision. It just sort of happened.
Yeah,
I blinked and it had been 10 years since I'd touched a musical instrument. And those 10 years I look back on, and I don't remember myself. I'm not going to say they were a bad 10 years.
right.
I'm just saying that whether they were good or bad, I'm not sure I was ever fully there because I
Right.
have very few memories of me. I have memories of my children during those 10
Right.
years. I have memories of things that happened during those 10 years, but I don't remember. It's almost like they're somebody else's stories, like I wasn't actually in it.
Hmm.
And I think the reason is because I didn't have this to bring me back to myself.
Yeah. No, that's important. I think that you need that. You need the me time. So, and that's called my me time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm a musician and you're a turner, and that's who we are.
Mhm. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
Beginning and ending of it.
Yeah. Well, this has been great. I'm so grateful for you just your generosity of time and spirit, and your patience with me as I try to get my technology working properly.
Oh no.
Um,
This has been fun. Hopefully, maybe somebody hears it or sees it, and maybe they reach out. And the biggest thing is them reaching out, maybe just reaching out to somebody that can give either them a hand up or they give them a hand up. to find something else because we all got a story.